Okay, welcome to the second syntax lecture for this week. Once again on syntactical trees, but this time we're going to talk about syntax and move operations, the difference between deep structure and surface structure when we talk about syntax. Okay, so hopefully you watched the first video or understand syntax sufficiently enough that you could create a diagram like this of a simple declarative sentence like the children read a book. So the children read a book, not a question, it's a declarative sentence, so negative Q. And with our noun phrase and our verb phrase through the tense head, creating the sentence, the children, and then read a book. If you cannot do that, you should go back and watch the first video and do your homework. All right, so the declarative question can be written in the merge diagram just like the declarative sentence. Notice a declarative question here. And so if I said, the children read a book, we would indicate that difference just by changing the Q here to plus Q. What does that mean? It means that this sentence is now a question. The children read a book, right? Like here, the children read a book, right? Now, most of our questions are not declarative questions, right? Most of our questions, we change the word order in order to create that question. But the deep structure of that question is still a declarative sentence with a question marker. So deep structure says, what does this sentence say, right? And this little plus Q indicates to us that it's an interrogative or a question. The children read a book is the same as the children read a book, structurally, except for this plus or minus Q over here to indicate whether it is or is not a question. Deep structure is what lies underneath and is transformed into a surface structure that forms a question the way we recognize it, like, did the children read a book? So how do we get to that surface structure? How do we get from the declarative, the children read a book, to did the children read a book? To build questions in English, we need to use move operations. Merge allows us to build an infinite number of sentences, but some of these sentence types cannot be built through merge operations. In other words, we can't just combine phrases to get to some sentence types. These sentence types require move operations, in which one thing moves to another part of the sentence. The move operations demonstrate how the deep structure of the sentence becomes the surface structure of the sentence. In other words, how that deep structure, right, the declarative form plus question, becomes the way we actually ask a question in English. We'll work with two question types here. Yes-no questions, which are the result of the move operation of inversion, in which the operator or the first auxiliary is inverted with the subject, and WH questions, which are the result of inversion and WH movement. They have two steps, inversion and WH movement, in which the WH word or phrase moves to the specifier position for the CP. So we're going to look at two of these examples. Yes-no questions are pretty simple to create. If you think about it, all we do is we move the T, or the tense word, to the C. So in the examples in the book, you will see that the tense word, if it's a modal, will actually be there under the T. And so all you're doing is moving that modal word to the front of your sentence, right? Following that little arrow here, right? The tense word shoots to the front of our sentence, the front of our clause structure, right? Now, what happens if you have the children were reading a book? Well, that were would be your tense word, and that were would shoot to the front. Were the children reading a book? But what happens then if we have a sentence that doesn't have an auxiliary in it? Like the children read a book, right? We don't have an auxiliary. We don't have a helping verb, right, in classical terms, right? We have the children read. When we don't have an auxiliary, we use the operator, the dummy operator, which is the word do. And that word do has to carry the tense of the sentence, right? So in this case, our tense was plus PST, was past, read. So this becomes did. So did, and then the whole rest of the sentence is exactly the same. The children read a book. All that happens to make a yes-no question from a declarative sentence is we have to invert the subject, the children, with the operator, our first auxiliary, or in this case the dummy operator, a form of do. Just invert them, right? So instead of being subject verb, we go first auxiliary subject, and everything else stays exactly where it is. Pretty simple, I hope, right? More complicated and not complicated, complex are WH questions because they involve two things. So remember, we're always going to start with that merge structure. What is the deep structure, the underlying structure of the question? Well, what we do is we change the sentence. So instead of saying, what medicine should Jill take, we recognize that our sentence would invert the subject and the first auxiliary. In this case, Jill and should are inverted, right? So we switch it to Jill should take. What should Jill take? What medicine? So we end up with Jill should take what medicine? Or if we were a question, right? Jill should take what medicine? Right? Because we got a plus Q here. That indicates the deep structure of this question. What medicine should Jill take is plus question, Jill should take what medicine? Now remember, we built this the same way we built all trees. We start at the bottom. Medicine's a noun, noun head. What's a determiner? Determiner plus noun head is a noun phrase. That noun phrase describes or complements the verb take, right? What do we take? What medicine, right? So the verb and the complement are together as the verb head for the verb phrase. That verb phrase and its tense marker, which in this case is the modal should, merge together with our noun phrase Jill, which is our subject, to create Jill should take what medicine. We know it's a question, right? So we add plus question. Jill should take what medicine is our underlying or our deep structure for this question. But how do we get from this deep structure to our actual question, what medicine should Jill take? Well, the first step is always that inversion. So just like the yes-no question we did, we are going to then move our T to the C position. And you see where I'm the little arrow here? T to the C position. So that should Jill take what medicine? Doesn't make any sense at this point, right? Doesn't make any sense because we haven't completed our moves, but we've done our first move. We've inverted our subject in our first auxiliary, which in this case is a modal should. Now we're ready to do our WH movement. And our WH movement is going to move our WH phrase, in this case, the noun phrase, what medicine, from the complementary position after take to the front of our sentence in the C position. In this case, the C, it becomes a specifier for the rest of our sentence. Right? Jill should take what medicine becomes what medicine should Jill take. See the arrow? We put those little T's there to indicate that those are things that have moved in our structure. Questions? Contact me, right? And definitely, if you have questions, let me know. If they have specific questions about the homework, let me know. I'm happy to look at what you've done and give you feedback. Good luck.